Welcome to the deep dive. We're plunging into Genesis chapter 14 today. And let me tell you, it's really packed. Unexpected turns, ancient battles.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And some truly remarkable encounters. It throws us right into this world of kings, conflict.
Yeah.
Right? It's quite an adventure packed into just one chapter.
Okay, let's unpack this. The chapter kicks off with a literal war, a big one.
Yeah, you've got these four kings, Arnaphel of Shinar, Arioch of Elisar, Kedorlaomer of Elam, and Tidal of Goim.
Right, sort of a northern eastern alliance.
Exactly. And they're going up against five other kings down south, Bera of Sodom, Beersheba of Gomorrah, Shinab of Admah, Shemeber of Zeboim.
And the king of Bela, which the text notes is also called Zoar. So
Yeah.
it's 4 against 5.
And what's fascinating here is the backstory. The source makes it clear, this wasn't just a random fight.
Oh.
The five southern kings had been subject to Kedorlaomer for 12 years. 12
Wow.
years.
Yeah.
But they rebel in the 13th year. So this war we're reading about, this the response happening in the 14th year.
Yeah, got it. And this wasn't just a quick march down south either, was it? The sources detail Kedorlaomer and his allies doing quite a bit before tackling the rebels.
Oh, definitely. They didn't just go straight for Sodom and Gomorrah. They first swept through and defeated several groups. The Rephates and Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzites and Ham.
The Emites in Sheva Kiriathaim, the Horites in the hill country of Seir, all the way down to El Paran near the desert.
Right. And they even conquered territory belonging to the Amalekites and the Amorites in Hazazon Tamar before confronting those five rebellious kings.
So it really paints a picture of significant power projection and the main battleground for the rebels.
That was the Valley of Siddim, which the source identifies as the Salt Sea area.
And it mentions something specific about the terrain.
Yes. It says the valley was full of tar pits, beadman pits, really.
And here's where it gets really interesting, tactically, I suppose. When the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah tried to flee the battle.
Some of their men fell right into those tar pits. The text says so explicitly.
Wow. So the terrain itself was a hazard.
Absolutely. The rest escaped to the hills, but the four victorious kings then just seized everything, all the goods, all the food from Sodom and Gomorrah.
But they took more than just goods and food, didn't they?
Crucially, yes. They also carried off Abram's nephew, Lot.
Who was living in Sodom at the time.
Right, along with all his possessions.
So this is where Abram enters the picture directly. Not as a bystander, but right into the conflict.
Exactly. Someone managed to escape the battle, finds Abram identified here as Abram the Hebrew, and tells him what happened to Lot.
And Abram wasn't isolated. He was living near the great trees of Mamre the Amorite.
And the source makes a point of naming Mamre and his brothers, Eshcol and Aner, saying they were allied with Abram. They had a pact.
Which becomes important later. So Abram hears his relative is captured.
And his response, it's immediate. It shows, incredible loyalty, but also capability. He doesn't just fret. He acts.
He certainly does. He didn't go alone either. The text says he called out 318 trained men.
Trained men, born in his own household. Think about that.
That's a significant private force, isn't it? Ready to go.
Absolutely. And he leads them in pursuit, going north as far as Dan.
And his strategy seems pretty effective.
Very. During the night, Abram divides his forces to attack. He routs those four kings.
Didn't just beat them, he routs them and pursues them.
All the way to Hobah, which is north of Damascus, a considerable distance.
So the outcome.
A total success for Abram. He recovered everything.
Everything.
All the goods, his nephew Lot and his possessions, and also the women and the other people who'd been taken captive. A complete reversal.
Okay, so Abram returns victorious.
Yep.
Lot is safe. The goods are recovered. But the story isn't over. He's met by two significant figures on his return.
Right. First, the king of Sodom comes out to meet him in the Valley of Sheva, which is also called the King's Valley.
But wait, before that meeting really gets going in the narrative, someone else appears, almost, interrupting the flow.
Yes. It's a very striking moment. Melchizedek, the king of Salem, shows up.
King of Salem. And he brings out bread and wine.
And he's identified, very specifically, as a priest of God Most High.
That's remarkable. Kind of mysterious, this figure appearing right then.
It really is. And Melchizedek blesses Abram. He says, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth."
And he also blesses God Most High for delivering Abram's enemies into his hand.
Right. And what's Abram's response to this blessing and provision?
He gives Melchizedek a tenth of everything he recovered. A tithe.
Which raises so many questions, doesn't it? Who exactly was this king priest? What's the full significance of this blessing, this offering, happening right after the battle, but before the meeting with Sodom's king?
It's a profound moment. Then the narrative returns to that meeting with the king of Sodom.
Yes, in the King's Valley.
And the king of Sodom makes Abram an offer. He says, give me the people back, but you can keep all the goods for yourself.
Which, after such a victory, might seem like a reasonable, even generous offer. But Abram's response?
It's incredibly powerful. It really defines his character here.
Absolutely. He refuses. Point blank.
He says, I have raised my hand to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. Basically swearing an oath.
An oath that he will accept nothing belonging to the king of Sodom.
He specifies not even a thread or the thong of a sandal.
Why? He states his reason very clearly.
So that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich.
Wow. He's making it absolutely clear. His prosperity, his success, it comes from God Most High, the same God invoked by Melchizedek.
Not from the king of Sodom, whose city had, let's say, a certain reputation.
Exactly. He wants no ambiguity about the source of his blessing.
He does make one exception, though, doesn't he, for his ally?
Yes, a practical and just exception. He says what his own men have already eaten, that's fine. And the share belonging to his allies Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre.
His Amorite allies mentioned earlier.
Right. He says let them have their share. He honors his agreements with them.
So, okay, that's the narrative. What does this all mean for you listening now, this ancient story?
Well, it's definitely more than just, an old battle report. It hits on some deep themes. Loyalty under pressure. Abram risking everything for Lot.
Decisive action, too. He didn't just sit there.
No, he acted immediately with the resources he had. And then there's encountering the unexpected, this mysterious figure Melchizedek appearing.
And that powerful statement Abram makes about the source of his provision, his success. Refusing the king of Sodom's offer.
That refusal is key. It highlights this deep commitment to his oath, his reliance on a higher power, not earthly wealth or political favor, especially from a questionable source.
It really gives us a picture of leadership, maybe, and integrity in what seems like a pretty chaotic world back then. It shows that even in the middle of conflict and rescue, values matter.
Yeah, values and perspective on where true blessing comes from.
So this deep dive into Genesis 14, it reveals a world, of ancient power struggles, surprising alliances, these profound encounters.
It really leaves us with a lot to think about. What does it mean to stand by your values even when you're offered immense wealth or personal gain?
And what about figures like Melchizedek? Appearing briefly, but seeming to connect the earthly and the divine in such a direct way.
That juxtaposition is fascinating, isn't it? Giving a tenth to this priest-king associated with God Most High versus refusing even a shoelace from the king of Sodom. What does that tell us about discerning the source of things in our own lives?
Definitely something to mull over as you go about your day.